I like it here. As the last glow of redness left on the far horizon sinks away slowly and disappears, everything is plunged into total darkness. The boat ended up being sold yesterday. After today, the man will no longer be a ship owner or a captain. He will merely be an islander. When he told his wife he sold the boat, she said, "I have something to tell you." "Go ahead." "I will leave the island now. I will leave and I will not come back." She spoke slowly and purposefully. He could tell by looking at her eyes that she was really going. Her eyes resembled the horizon over the ocean. There was no turning of her head, no pleading, no resentment. Sitting amongst the waves, the wind and the darkness, he briefly looks down into box full of fish. "Are you going to leave us?" He feels over the steering wheel, worn old by his hands. Farewell. Meet a good owner. The engine answers with a roar and the boat begins to pick up speed. Spray after spray crashes into the hull windows. My heart feels the same way, the man thinks. I Like It Here, written by Changhoon. As the last glow of redness left on the far horizon sinks away slowly and disappears, everything is plunged into total darkness. Having traveled in a straight line since leaving the island, while dusk has sunk away into night, it seems as though darkness had been what the boat was looking for. Out here, where all depth perception disappears, the spirits of the night pour down, and a strange, almost impossible to describe texture fills the air. The ocean, the air, and the sky mix into one color, so that it seems the world is upside down and the sea is falling into the sky, the water saturating the air, the clouds, and the stars. The engine cries out urgently, sounding like it's about to explode or break apart at any minute. Meanwhile, the bow of the boat is endlessly flying up, pausing in the air for a moment, before quickly circling back down, shaking, and finally flying back up again. The spray from the bow crashes into the bridge windows like bullets. The boat is crying. As he stares at the screen of his GPS, the man's face glows in the blue light and changes into that of a spirit. The depth of the water changes drastically, from 50 to 60 to 70. "Are you seasick?" the man asks, looking to a corner of the bridge. His wife only nods in response. He turns on the navigation light, as if just remembering to do so. The deck, that was hidden in the darkness, lights up instantly and, as soon as it does, also creates an umbrella of light with the boat at its center. Pop, pop. Water droplets bounding upwards sparkle instantaneously. Silver-colored rain falls into the umbrella. The crashing waves at the bow of the boat are illuminated in such a way that they resemble a giant sea monster wagging its tongue as it hides its body deep in the ocean. The navigation light finds the end of his wife's long, wavy hair, turning it white and making it look as though she has a disease that is causing her to age from her hair first. But it's not just her hair. Her skin shines where she has put on lotion, making her look pitiful, like she is trying too hard to hide her wrinkles and rough skin. She stands, propping herself against a door away from him, flinching every time the water hits the windows. She's old, Well, she is almost 50, the man thinks to himself. The skin around her eyes sags, and her hands have become muscly. It has been over 25 years since she married him and had kids, more than enough time to change from an energetic young girl to a middle-aged woman who buys hair dye. Time enough for her once roiling passions to grow cold, to be folded up nicely and placed in a drawer. But now, with all that time behind her, she says she will leave. She will leave forever. Why? Where to? We're here, so just hold tight. Having known darkness was the destination, the man knows they must have arrived. His wife's mouth is full of complaints. The waves are too high. Let's go back before someone gets killed, she says. They won't even issue a warning on waves like this. They aren't that bad. The GPS screen shows that they have indeed arrived. The man turns the engines down, and the rough, roaring sound dies away. After continuously pitching up and down and racing harshly forward, the boat seems now unsure what to do. The built-up momentum in the boat hits the resistance in the waves, causing the boat to rattle as it rolls hard to the left and right. His wife nearly goes flying to the floor, barely keeping hold of the edge of the cabinets. She looks anxious and restless, like she's been kidnapped. Though it's true, the man thinks, that he did force her to come along when she refused. The man sticks out his head to look around, but the only thing he can see is the light he turned on. Just how a drop of India ink will only create a black spot on the surface of clear water. The light illuminates only 3 to 4 feet around the boat, never spreading out further. The light does brighten everything right in front of your eyes, however. But in the end, it only makes the darkness that much darker, so nothing can be seen. Of course, the only thing on the other side of the curtain of light, the man knows, is the rolling, endless ocean. If you happen to see one of the spirits wandering the area, it will criticize you for trying to measure the depth of the darkness with your human eyes. But when the boat stops, it has been his long-held habit, a fisherman's habit, to take a look around. Here, about halfway between the island he lives on and Jeju Island, is where the large head hairtail fishing area is located. There is no one here, however, because for the past couple of years, the area has died off. And anyway, it's not hairtail season. After running furiously for 1 hour, the boat now sits in the middle of the vast ocean, within the cone of light from its navigation lamp, and catches its breath for the first time. This boat traveled to and from this fishing area for 2 years, and then, for 3 consecutive years, was tied up at the wharf. After the area died off, the man had no margin to pay for gas or labor costs. At first, if he took a day off, he took a loss. And then, even if he worked, he took a loss. Until eventually, by just having the boat, he was taking a loss. So, in the end, he put it up for sale. During that time, he even occasionally regretted being greedy and buying such a large boat. I should have listened to my wife when she said no, he thought. He had planned this trip by himself. A few days ago, a person from Jeju Island had come and seen the boat, and before it was sold, he wanted to go out fishing one last time. Knowing he would not be able to again, the fishing season had ended, but he thought he could at least catch enough fish for his family to eat for a while. The boat ended up being sold yesterday. The buyer said he would be back with the money in 2 days, and that's tomorrow. After today, the man will no longer be a ship owner or a captain. He will merely be an islander. Since he first became a captain when he was 20, except for a few years he spent as a crew member on a merchant ship, he has never not been a captain. The memory of his first outing as captain, of passing through the rough waves of the East China Sea, and returning with a boat so full of croakers and bass it was almost sinking. That memory will soon be nothing more than a dim memory of a middle-aged island man who has lost his boat. When he stamped the contract, he felt as though all the blood had run out of his body. When he told his wife he sold the boat, she said, "I have something to tell you." "Go ahead." "I will leave the island now. I will leave and I will not come back." In the morning he went to the fisheries co-op bank and checked the amount of his debts. Even after giving all the money from his boat, the remaining principal and interest adds up to the price of another boat. When he got home, his wife was straightening up, or, more accurately, she was packing. "What are you doing?" "I told you I was leaving." "You're leaving? Don't be crazy." "I'm serious. I've thought about it for a long time, so don't think I'm kidding." She spoke slowly and purposefully. He could tell by looking at her eyes that she was really going. Her eyes resembled the horizon over the ocean. There was no turning of her head, no pleading, no resentment. "Life doesn't always work out the way we want it to," she had said to him. "I suppose if you live every day as best you can, there will certainly be good days ahead. So don't feel too sad and don't get angry, you know. Shouldn't we have peace within our family regardless?" When she pleaded like this, her eyes resembled his daughter Younghwa's. These were the eyes he had grown so used to. She also had eyes full of hatred and wrath. Those were like the glaring eyes of his son. "My fishing business failed and all I did was build up debt. Yeah, and I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. If I ever do it again, I will throw myself into the ocean and die," he remembers saying during one argument with his son. His son's eyes growing subdued at these words. This all happened the day after he had been heartbroken, tired, and drunk. During all those times, he had never once seen this calm horizon in his wife's eyes. "Tomorrow morning, I will take a boat and leave the island." "Oh, quit repeating that." "I will live with Younghwa, because when Youngshik finishes his military service, Younghwa will graduate." "And how will you provide for yourself?" "I will do anything as long as it means the kids don't starve." "Oh, you were just waiting for me to sell the boat, huh?" "That's right. I was waiting for you to sell the boat." "You really planning on going?" "I've already told you." "Stay here and lie down," the man says to his wife. "I want to go out and get some air at least. I'm scared too." This last part, "I'm scared too," she almost whispers. The boat and all this darkness, the ocean with its rough, rolling waves, the isolation of knowing no matter how much you rub your eyes, you will not see another boat. These are the things of which she is afraid. He turns on the fishing lamp as well, which, with the engine running so low, is no brighter than a regular light bulb. The deck gets a little brighter, and the spirits in the darkness are pushed back a tiny bit more. Being pushed back, they stick out their tongues and dance. "I have been thinking since coming here," he says as he pulls his equipment out of the deck storage cabinet. Though it is now just open ocean with no islands nearby, in the height of summer when the fishing season began, this area would become a little city on the water by night. Fishermen from his island and from Jeju Island, even fishermen from the West Sea and the East Sea who heard about this place, would bring their boats here and turn on their fishing lamps. As the boats gathered, passageways were set up, and the glistening light from the fishing lamps looked like fire from a welder on the surface of the water, or like a jewelry store open for business. But like a market that loses its vitality as all the businesses die out one after another, the welder's shop disappeared, and the jewelry store closed its doors and sank away. The man casts his fishing hook into that place. Push! Even with the rough waves, he hears the weight enter the water with a splash. Anchovies now gather in the light of the fishing lamp, followed successively by the fish that eat anchovies and bite the bait. "I thought that you were getting old, too," he says finally. "Well, how much time has passed?" his wife says. There was no energy in her words. It could just be because she feels seasick, but it is also reminiscent of someone who has lost all desire. When one loses all longing, one tends to speak more placidly. She bends over slightly and stares blankly into the ocean. "You were so pretty. Just how something lost is especially missed. You must grow attached all over again to a person who will soon leave." The waves and the darkness slowly disappear from his eyes, and he sees a young woman pressing her lips together to form a straight line. He also sees a mug on a cafe table, and the girl's beautifully permed hair, like the hair of a famous movie actress. The man peeks over at his wife's breasts, pressed up against her left arm and pushing out, just like he used to steal a glance of her breast when she was a young woman. How many times has he slept, resting his head in that bosom? All the fatigue from his work on long fishing trips was built up on the ocean, and so the ocean couldn't ease it. This heavy exhaustion, feeling like it would tear through his skin, was turned over to her body. When he came home after consigning his fish to the fisheries co-op, he would always find her body there. "You worked hard," she would say. "Was everything okay at home?" "Yes. The waves weren't too bad?" "They were pretty rough around Huksan Island." "Did you catch a lot of fish?" "Oh, same as always." And then he would tuck his body into hers. Her breasts and lower parts were always right there, too. He would bury his face in her chest, thrust his body into hers and shake like a boat in a tempest, until finally his deep fatigue would blow away like the wind. That is how they lived. His wife laughs wryly. "Are you trying to get me to stay by telling me I'm pretty?" "Am I? I was just so surprised to hear you say you were leaving." "Well, you weren't so bad yourself as a young man. You had a large, strong body and were famous for being the young captain who came back with a full boat. If it weren't for you, I would have died before getting married on this island." A grin stretches across the man's face, but just as it does, the man suddenly feels like it is all for show, like some passage in a play, like he could, with a light nudge, say, "Hey, quit kidding around." And his wife and his boat would say, all right, it was just a joke," as they all laugh together. The fish aren't biting. He brings in the line and casts it out again. Vague hope and sudden rage were constant companions on this boat. He wanted to live well, as if he could make all the fish in the sea around Korea his. He wanted to have stacks of money in his boat that he could give to his wife and children. The fishing business, too, is a high-tech competition. Big boats with nice equipment earn the money, so he got greedy. And now this boat will disappear. Living on an island without a boat is like being a miner going into the mine without a pickaxe. It is no different than being a soldier heading into battle without a gun. And now it's happening to him. "I think I committed some great sin in my past life," his wife says as she stares into the ocean. "What do you mean?" "Because I was born on an island. I like it just fine." "That's because men don't know what the ocean and the island are to women. Because I never let on how I feel. How could you? A long time ago when we were on the boat and I said I had to go to the bathroom, do you remember what you said to me?" "I must have said just find a place to do it. We never had a bathroom on our boat." "That's what it's like to be a woman on an island." "All boats are like that. What, was I supposed to build a bathroom for you on our boat when you only ride once in a while? All the other women work it out just fine." His wife buries her head in her arm, pushing her breasts up a little more. "That's what I'm trying to say. I can't do that like other women." Can't you tell by the fact that every time I get on a boat, I get seasick? And it's not just boats. If you walk a few steps, you meet the ocean. If you turn and walk the other direction, ocean. If you walk sideways, ocean. If it's not a road, it's a field or a mountain. Just like that, an island woman only has a few clearly set places to go. A wave lifts the boat high in the air and drops it back down. The man's body teeters and his wife huddles down to the deck. It's all the same. That's just life, the man says. Life can be lived on land, too. I have thought about it my whole life. Why was I born on an island? There is no other answer besides I have committed a sin, and now I'm being punished for it. Then just think that you are fulfilling your punishment while you're here. I wish I could remember the sin. It's just unfair that I can't. Just then, he gets a bite and reflexively pulls it up. It's a hairtail, a lucky catch. Its iridescent body violently flounders on the deck before growing still. The dorsal fin is quick and nimble, yet also helps it glide gracefully through the waves. Its eyes are clear as crystal. Swimming elegantly through the deep ocean, it suddenly fell into the man's hands, moving ownership from itself to the man. Looking at the fish's body sparkle in the light, his thoughts momentarily grow distant. This feeling is why he fished. Through this, he made a living, and because of this, he came into debt. Because of this, he had joy, and because of this, he had anxiety. It was like looking at a beautiful marble made of poison. He pulls up another right after. The bleak deck fills with a pure vitality. His wife, slightly hunched over, brings over a knife and cutting board. Without speaking, she takes one of the fish, scrapes off the silver scales, cuts off its fins, and thinly slices its flesh. Just as the man has lived his whole life as a fisherman, she has lived her whole life as a fisherman's wife. Like someone from the mountains who runs away to live in the city, will always, whether they like it or not, be really good at chopping wood and making a fire. His wife is an expert with a knife. The hairtail watches as its own body gets deboned, until finally, with nothing but its spine and tail left, it gets tossed back to its home with a splash. Only flesh is left, placed neatly on a plate. Here, eat some. The man chews on a piece with a little sauce before opening his mouth heavily. Are you really going to go? He asks. I have already told you that I have decided on it. It is just left for you to decide what you will do. And what if I decide I won't go with you? Let's get a divorce. Maybe this will be the last meal she ever prepares for me, he thinks. How can you say that word so naturally? He replies. The world doesn't revolve around you, you know. You said yourself, I'm getting old. All right, your good years are all behind you. What's your plan now? Your wish was to own a boat like this. Do you remember what you said to me as I was trying to talk you out of it? You said you didn't care if business failed, and you ended up in heavy debt. If you never owned a boat like this, you would regret it even after you died. That's exactly how I feel now. The usually sweet fish is tasteless in his mouth. The wind comes out of the darkness, slyly rattling the plate as it whooshes to the other end of the boat, disappearing. The dark rain clouds wetted with the seawater are blown by the wind, so thickly stacked that it looks like the whole sky is moving together. As his wife stares at them, she asks, So you really like the ocean, huh? The question surprises him. Like the ocean? It's something commonly talked about when having a drink with his fellow fishermen. There is the answer always given when tourists walk by and ask, but does he like the ocean? Does he really love it? It doesn't take him long to realize that he has never once truly put thought into that question. The red sun rising up over the deep blue ocean at dawn, the white wake stretching out V-shaped behind his boat as he heads towards that sun. His nets full of fish, The joy of returning with a full boat, the sunset exploding over the horizon, the light of the fishing lamp at night, the sweetness of the break taken at the end of a hard day's work. Sure, it's all beautiful, but does he like it? His father's left foot was missing its big toe. The part with the toenail just above the knuckle was cleanly cut off, the tip hardened. "Father, what happened to your foot?" he asked as a child. "A rat bit it off." "Rats bite?" "I was on the South Pacific Ocean and had been up 4 days straight catching tuna, until I finally passed out with sleep. When I woke up, a rat this big was gnawing on my toe, eating the flesh and licking up all the blood to the last drop. I was so scared I didn't even feel the pain. All the food had run out, so, with nothing else to eat, they started trying to eat us." His father washed the toe with the tooth marks hardened into the flesh over and over, like giving water to a newly planted seed. But in the end, he was unable to grow a new toe. The man remembers the last words his father said to him before he moved on to the next world, leaving his big toe in the belly of a rat. "You must become a great captain." His father, who only ever worked as a crewman, considered becoming a captain as a way to never be eaten by a rat. Even if it wasn't his father's last wish, the man had always liked fishermen and the ocean. When you cried as a child, just hearing the sound of a boat would make you stop. When you went out on the ocean, you never wanted to come back, even after the sun went down. This was what his past was like. His past he couldn't remember, and the testimonies weren't wrong. As a young child at school, by just listening to the minute differences in the tong, tong, tong of the engines coming through the windows, he could tell to whose boat each sound belonged. When school let out, he would go down to the docks and fawn over all the neighborhood boats. There was never a day his face and hands weren't covered in grease and soot from touching the engines and staring into the mufflers. There were many adults who scolded him for doing this and never studying, but his father was one of the happiest to see his curiosity for the ocean and his interest in boats. No one his age could keep up with him. He was the fastest swimmer. He knew the most about the ocean and the time of the tides. At age 20, he became the youngest captain ever of a fishing boat. Wanting to spread his wings over vast oceans, he also worked as a commercial fisherman and traveled over the Pacific, the Indian, and the Atlantic Oceans. A great captain. The man thinks that perhaps becoming one is just as difficult as becoming a great husband. Just like he thinks he knows how to be a great husband and father, but realizes time and again that he actually doesn't. He thinks now that he actually has no idea what it takes to be a great captain either. A captain that catches a lot of fish? A captain good at maneuvering through high waves? A captain who is not afraid of stormy seas? A captain who takes good care of his boat? A captain who would rather spend 10 days on rough seas than spend all day lounging in his living room? Of course, he did all these things. He did all these things better than anyone, but it seems like he did not become a great captain. Shouldn't being a great captain at least mean never, ever giving up your boat? "I don't know whether or not I like the ocean," he finally replies to his wife. "It's just what you're used to." "You're probably right. I've never done anything other than work on the ocean." "It's true, you haven't. You have lived concerned about nothing but boats and the sea. That's why this happened. So what will you do here now?" I have actually wanted to say this for a long time, but I put it off over and over, seeing the fire in your eyes as you stared at your boat and the ocean. When you bought this boat, when you didn't listen to me, and you went into so much debt and bought such a big boat. I even thought about running away alone at night. But in the end, I wasn't able to. I didn't want to be the first to spoil everything. "Is that so?" "Even when you put the boat up for sale, I waited. I thought if he just sells it, If he just sells it, then I will tell him. Yeah, you must have felt that way. I'm sorry I caused you so much hardship. The time has come. I can't live like this anymore. I'm leaving. Unable to look into those eyes, calm as the horizon anymore, he turns his gaze away and looks over his boat. He first looks at the bow, riding up on a big wave and pitching quickly back down. What do the eyes of the boat look like? Does it have the calm, horizon-like eyes of his wife as it stares into the dark ocean? Each time the boat crashes down and the spray splashes up its sides, he thinks that it looks like the boat is actually sobbing heavily. 2 large anchors sit on either side of the boat, tied perfectly with rope. When was the last time he dropped those anchors? He suddenly hears vividly in his mind the heavy sound of the anchors being released and rushing to the bottom of the sea. Since he last dropped anchor at the intersection between Jeju Island and the fishing boat broadcast center, this boat has been sitting in the same spot for 3 years. And the deck below is the same story. Within the oval-shaped outer wall, the storage room, the fish storage, and the live well all sit empty right now. Only the very top compartment is in use. His nets, boots, gloves, and stuff like that rest neatly inside, musty, having sat unused for so long. He pulls up a few more hairtail and a few mackerel. His wife tries to slowly stand, but unable to control herself against the waves, sits back down as if falling over. Her bluish complexion makes it clear that she is feeling seasick. "Drink a glass of soju," he says to her. No answer. Instead, another wave crashes over the side. He opens a bag of ice he brought along and pours it onto the fish he's caught. He then opens a bottle of soju. "Come on, drink some." "I don't want to. Let's head back." "We should at least fill 1 box." "Fill 1 box and do what with it?" "I want you and the kids to eat them." "Did I ask you to catch us fish? Did you think I would be so happy you caught us fish I would dance or something?" "Still, if I caught 'em, someone should eat them." "It is time we really consider how we will provide for our kids. What is 1 box of fish going to do?" "What else can I do?" His response was a bit out of nowhere, but really, on a night like this, what else could he be doing? "Well, what do you want to do for us?" "Then that's why I'm saying we put everything in order here and leave together." "What will I do if we leave?" "Hey, you're not old yet." "Fine, I'm not old. What will I do?" "These days, 60 is considered so young they don't throw a big party anymore, and you're only 50. What can't you do on land with your muscle?" "Are you telling me to go work construction?" "I don't like the thought of you working construction either. But still, it's something you should at least think about. How will we live on the island? Can't you throw away your lingering affection for it? You don't even have a boat anymore." As she is saying this, he feels a strong bite. The hairtail he pulls up is about as thick as his hand. It's big. Before he hears his wife say this, he is momentarily lost in deep thought. A fish this big is pretty rare. He stares into the pleasing and intense iridescence of the fish's body. "We can send this to Younghwa to cook and eat," he says. "I would rather we sell this one." Just then a harsh wind blows, and off to one side the deep black clouds break apart, exposing a heap of distant, beautiful stars. The clouds break apart, but the wind is as strong as ever. The stars flicker as if wriggling in annoyance at the wind rubbing past them. "Wonk!" His wife finally vomits. She staggers to her feet, her pale face now totally ashen. He soon hears her vomiting again from the stern of the boat. He hesitates, thinking if he should go over there. He regrets forcing her to come along after she said she didn't want to, saying she would get seasick. But really, just like he had nothing else but fishing to do on a night like this, he couldn't leave his wife at home. His wife who says she is going to leave him. Occasionally, new recruits from the mainland came down to the islands to work on fishing boats, sent by the crewman management center. They would have mean, squinting eyes, or high, sharp cheekbones, or tattoos on their wrists, or clenched teeth. They would look either perpetually ready for a fight or dopey and vacant. They came because they were running away from something, or because they were pushed away by people, or because they wanted to provide for their families, or even because they were just curious about what it was like, but that was something you could never ask directly. They were generally kids who had never even handled a rope before, but without them, the fishing boats wouldn't be able to ship out. They would be taken through the Jeju Sea and the South China Sea, and from day one they would get seasick. No matter how much they would squint their eyes or flaunt their tattoos, their faces would go bright yellow, and they would start to vomit. And then the fishermen would make them drink soju. At just seeing the plastic bowls filled with soju they would heave and put up their hands to wave no. Do you want to drink this, or do you want to be thrown into the ocean? At this threat, they would squeeze their eyes shut and drink. If you stop drinking, I'll kill you. Drink it all. When forced to drink, 9 out of 10 would have their color return, and the seasickness dissipate. That's when the work would start. It wasn't hazing. It was the best method, handed down from generation of fishermen who are already lying in their grave. No one had found any better way. He used the same method when he first got on a boat as an adolescent, exchanging sleep for catching fish, that unending work. And through his time on the merchant ships, working on the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. When your body was sick, the answer was soju. When you were overcome with loneliness, soju. When you were falling asleep during work, soju. When you didn't have the strength to work, soju. Even when you got hurt and blood was gushing out of you, the answer was soju. Now that he thinks about it, he wonders where all the people he worked fishing boats with are these days. There was the man from somewhere in Gyeongnam, his chief engineer when he was a 20-year-old captain, who was so upset to have such a young captain he didn't say a word the entire time. And all those people on the foreign merchant ship with him, like the guy who, on the Jeju Sea, threw the bowl of soju into the water, who was then thrown into the water himself, and thanks to the man jumping in after him, was pulled back up. And then that man from Seoul. Where is he? What is he doing now? Suddenly, everything feels taken away, like it was never there. As he listens to the sound of his wife vomiting, he thinks for a minute why he was born on an island. He has never been dissatisfied about it before, but seeing now how the day he will lose it all lies ahead of him, he wonders if he, like his wife, was born here because of some sin he committed. He remembers the words of another fisherman. We gotta catch 'em all, even the goddamn little ones. We gotta catch and eat them all, down to the tiniest ones, and fucking ruin the ocean. Shit. Let's just toss these kinds of plastic bottles right into the water. Just pollute the damn thing. That way we can forget about this place and leave it behind. That way we won't have to pass this fucking work on to our children. It has been 7 years since Captain O, who gave the drunken rant, has left this place. He was living somewhere around Seoul, but the man has heard passing rumors that no one knows where he is now. Who knows what he is doing now? But the man can be sure he didn't pass on being a fisherman to his children. The man also knows from long experience that when you haven't heard any news from someone who has left their hometown, when they haven't come back to visit, it clearly means they are too ashamed to show their face. The man is 50 years old. His body is strong, and he has a lot of muscle for his age, because he has done the hardest kind of work, fisherman's work, his whole life. There is no other kind of work he can't do. The problem is that the time for him to learn a new job or skill has passed, has long since passed. He is an expert with a boat, but he can't even drive a car. And his wife is saying they should leave. The box is almost full. The once floundering fish now lie neatly between the ice. This lets him know that his work has come to its end. Going back is the only thing left to do, but he has no desire to do it. It seems like the instant he returns to the island, his wife and boat will disappear like a dream. It seems like he will be sucked into the scenery of sitting alone in a room, as if he had done so for a long time. And he will hear from heaven, "Did you have a good time with your old wife and your boat?" His wife returns just then, looking worse. More than looking seasick, she looks like a prisoner who has spent 50 years receiving punishment. "I told you to drink a glass of soju." "How can you see me like this and have no thought of going back? Just tell me to drink soju. Is soju medicine?" She yells at him in a shrill voice. "What the hell is this ocean? Just what is it to you?" She says before quickly turning around and heaving up another mouthful of bile. The sound she makes seems not to come from her throat, but from deep within her bones, her marrow. At that very moment he gets a bite, and has no choice but to pull it up. A mackerel. "All right, let's head back. Answer me, what is the ocean?" "You love the ocean more than your own family." As she says this, she turns to the ocean and spits out what was gathering in her mouth. No doubt a spit full of ill will and deep hatred. "While you were out in foreign waters on a merchant ship, I had Yonghua and raised her, never complaining about the chores I did for your parents. I just waited for you." He feels another bite, but loses the fish. He feels fortunate to have lost it. "Still, it was better back then, when you were working on a merchant ship, or when you returned home and became the captain of someone else's boat. After you bought this boat and became the owner, because of the damn debt, I have felt so small. Every time I meet someone, I am so ashamed I can't say one word confidently. These last several years that they have spent burdened with debt and pressure from their guarantor flash through his mind. Sure, I also wish I had been able to give better support, so we could have escaped from this excruciating poverty. If I could just turn my life around, I would do something beyond just supporting you. If you had a chicken shop, I would carry chicken all over the surrounding neighborhoods until my legs broke off. If you ran a supermarket, I would sit at the checkout counter 24 hours a day for you. But what? What can a fisherman's wife do for her husband when she can't even ride on a boat? What can I do when the boat is tied up and just waiting to be sold?" Maybe because her chest feels tight, she stops talking and pushes on her throat with her fist. Her mascara runs with her tears. He gets another bite, and this time he sets it. But because he was looking at his wife, his hands move a little slow, and he feels the fish turn its head as it bites. With the hook in, the line gets wrapped around the fish's neck, and when the man pulls it up, the neck breaks. The fish goes instantly still. "In the end, you're just a seaman." The man suddenly gets angry himself. "That's right. You didn't know I was a seaman? You didn't know that when we got married?" "That's not what I mean." It sounds like there's something caught in her throat. "Then what?" "You are afraid of the mainland." These words cut him to the core, killing his anger. Here, everyone treats you as a hero, but on the mainland, that won't happen. Isn't that why you are afraid to go there? Can't you see that the sea is finally destroying you? Think about it. You weren't like this before we bought this boat and took on so much debt. That is, you didn't get drunk and violent. People live on land, not out here. What is so great that you choose to live on a piece of wood in the middle of the ocean instead of there on steady ground?" His gaze grows distant again. He has lived like a gourd dipper. He has lived floating in the middle of the ocean on a tiny island and a boat a few feet wide. He thought he lived broadly, nothing encumbering him. His chest feels tight. Are you going to do like your father did and say those words to Youngshik? His wife's voice calms down, sinking. She looks senile, a sight that would wring the heart of whoever saw it. It was like she chose not to cry, but to grow old instead. Suddenly, the man wants to cry too a little for no reason at all. He shakes his head. You must become a great captain. Of course he has no thought of saying this to his son. Then show your children. Show them how to live on land. She rubs her temples and vomits again, but nothing comes out. With her dry heaving, it looks like she is trying to pull out something stuck deep in her chest. In that image was her finally throwing aside a lifetime of refusal, doubt, and hatred. And with that, she enters the helm as if about to collapse. Sitting amongst the waves, the wind, and the darkness, he briefly looks down into box full of fish. Lying in the ice, the hairtail and mackerel look back up at him with blue eyes, as if asking, "Are you going to leave us? I was hoping you would be a side dish for my family for a while, but you will now either be my food as I travel off the island, or a package my wife carries as she leaves alone." The man himself is unable to tell whether he thought these words or said them aloud. Then his heart, his liver, his kidneys, and the rest feel like they are all being pulled out of him like a gutted fish. He feels like a red sea bream in the water tank of a sushi restaurant, pulled gasping into the air, its gills and guts pulled out, its blood drained, its backbone wagging, breathing out its last air and waiting for its final breath. Can't you see the ocean is finally destroying you? A spirit suddenly appears on the deck his wife has just disappeared from, imitating her words. You are afraid of the mainland. Maybe she's right. Maybe he doesn't like the ocean as much as he is afraid and hates to leave it. In what corner of the world is that rat poop his father's big toe became rolling? With the fish still staring dolefully up at him, he ties up the box in fabric as if it were a casket and, like a mourner at a funeral, carries it into the helm. We will be back in no time, so just hang on a little longer. His wife, lying stooped over, only moans, like a patient in intensive care. The GPS flashes that they are 2 kilometers from their destination. He turns off the fishing lamp. The umbrella of light quickly shrinks, and that darkness, thinking the world now belongs to it, coils around the boat. He feels over the steering wheel, worn old by his hands. Farewell. Meet a good owner. The engine answers with a roar and the boat begins to pick up speed. With the wind at their back, the boat rolls heavily. Unable to ride the waves evenly, it leans recklessly left and right as they speed forward. Spray after spray crashes into the hull windows. My heart feels the same way, the man thinks. I Like It Here is a short story by Chang-hoon, published in his collection I Like It Here. Published by Munhak Publishing Group. The English version is translated by Jason Woodruff and narrated for this audiobook by Maren Griffin. This audiobook was produced in 2021 with the support of the Literature Translation Institute of Korea.